There's one thing that developers often do, rebuilding their own websites. And mine has stayed the same for a long time. It was the moment to an uplift. The problem is that I didn't touch it for such a long time that the amount of stuff that I needed to change was daunting. So in this video, I want to show you how I went from my previous version of the website to the new one. I want to talk about the technologies that I'm using, the decisions that I took, but also how I went from that previous old version to a new version, a bit more minimal, a bit more like me. And I want to talk about that because I've used AI. We are in 2025, so I used AI for a ton of stuff to help me out during this process. And I realized that many of the things that I would normally do in the old way, now I need to take a different approach. Also, I came to some conclusions of things that didn't work through the AI process of asking the LLM to do stuff for me. I had to do things slightly different. I use several tools and I want to talk about them during this video. So if you are thinking about giving an uplift to your personal website or you want to build one, I think you'll like to watch this video. So let's do it. First of all, why doing it? My website was built with 11t. That is a great static site generator. The problem is that it stayed in the version 1 dot something for a long time, and 11t is currently in version 3. And as you know, upgrading stuff, especially between multiple major versions, especially on JavaScript, it tends to be a nightmare. So I was always delaying this activity because it was too painful. But I needed to do it. I needed something a bit more modern. I needed something a bit more professional because nowadays the requirements that I have for my website are not the same that I used to have in the past. In the past, it was just a blog. Eventually, it started growing with stuff like having links for my personal profiles, having, for example, information for conferences, having the talks that I gave in the past, having the courses, all of that stuff. And it was not growing in the perfect way. So I decided to come up with this new version, a bit more elegant in my opinion. So I still have dark mode and light mode. I really love the way that this thing turned out because it reflects my personal taste and my personal style. So I'm really happy how things came up. Some requirements that I had to this. I wanted to keep this as a static site, so using a static site generator, just plain HTML files. Content could be written with Markdown, for example, and easily to evolve in a way that I could go to GitHub, update a file, it will compile and publish things. And I wanted to do it fast. I didn't want to waste a ton of time trying to come up with a new website or trying to move to a new technology that I had to learn, so I decided to stay with 11t. The problem starts right there. Why? Migrating stuff from version 1.3 to 3 dot something, in theory it should be fine because 11t has a migration tool. By the way, if you don't know, if you are not familiar with 11t, 11t is this great and simple static site generator that you can build your website with a set of Markdown files and stuff like that. There's even other types of files that you can use. For example, if you go here into the guides and we zoom here, you can see that you can use stuff like HTML, Markdown, MDX, JavaScript, non-junks, liquid templates, all of that stuff. So you can pick the format that you are most comfortable with in order to use your templating language. Since for writing, for example, a blog post, it's great to use Markdown, I always loved 11t. Besides that, it's great because it will compile and publish the HTML, the output to your website. You don't need to use a ton of fancy libraries or a ton of fancy JavaScript frameworks. So I think it's great for the use case that I have. I don't need a crazy CMS. I don't need a ton of logic in the background. So I can do all that I want with 11t. So I decided to keep it. But 11t might have an upgrade tool. Okay, there's even migration guides. But when I tried to go through them, I came to the realization that many of the things that I had around 11t that were part of the initial template that I was using or extra features that I brought into it. Or for example, I had Eleventy, but also I had Tailwind for CSS, and moving them all together to the latest versions was a nightmare, let's face it. And if I try to do it, even with AI, asking the LLM, okay, let's move this to version something of Eleventy, let's move Tailwind as well to the latest version, let's do all of that together, please upgrade the website. It didn't work. Maybe for a simple reason, maybe because there's not enough information about Eleventy out there, there's not enough information about the stuff that I was doing, or simply because it was too many moving parts. So I decided to do it in a different way. Why? If I look into the website, it doesn't relate to the old one in terms of aesthetics, in terms of functionality. However, in terms of pages and links and all of that is exactly the same. By the way, just one small thing that is important to address here. There's one thing that I hate, that is when I go to a website and I see that the links are always changing. For example, if you write a blog post today and you link to a reference document out there in a given website or into a given blog post, that link shouldn't change. If it changes, there should be a redirect there, an HTTP redirect, so everything keeps working. During this process, I came to the conclusion that many of the links that I had on my website during the years, they were broken because someone made an uplift to their website and they decided to move things around. I didn't want to do that. I want the same things from the past there, but I want them with a new aesthetic. I want more information there. I want something better, but I want to keep the things from the past. What does that mean? It means that I could start this website from fresh. I didn't need to go to the migration process because this could be a new website just with that requirement. I need to have the same information. I need to have the same paths. Just that. With that in mind, I start from an empty project. Okay, what's the process that I took? First thing, I know that I want to use Eleventy. Okay, I know that I want to use the latest version. So the first thing that I will do is to go to the getting started and take these steps in order to have the project that I will be using. Then I could go online and start looking for templates. I could do it. I could go online and try to go to things like Theme Forest, for example, to buy a given template that looks fancy. And at first I was thinking about doing it because there's no great site generator, for example, that uses Eleventy. For example, I could go to something like Framer. By the way, if you don't know, framer.com is great to start designing a website. But even then, I realized that I will need to do a lot of work to take it from what is here to the technology that I wanted to use. So, how I approached this thing. If you have been following along with my videos, you have seen V0 for sure. I have used it in the past. V0 is great because you just come here and you prompt the thing that you want to build and it will come up with a website for that. Does that mean that it's exactly the code that I would use? No. V0 will start generating a ton of Reacts and a lot of stuff. I don't consider it as a production-ready website either. However, when compared to do something like going to ChatGPT or Claude and saying, please build a website, my experience during this process is that it will generate something a bit more realistic and closer to the thing that you will be using in production. For example, in terms of styles, in terms of the content that will be on the pages, of the template of a given page. For example, saying, okay, I want a page to list a workshop. V0 will do a better job than doing it with Claude or doing it with ChatGPT, for example. There's other alternatives. I tried them as well. I just decided to stay with V0 because I prefer the aesthetics that was being produced. So I came to V0 and I said, I want to build a website for someone that has blog posts, want to list talks, courses, workshops, an about page, all of that. It works in the developer space, so it is creating content as well for YouTube. So I want all of that with a minimalistic style, minimalistic aesthetic. I want it to be simple. I want to use just black and white, just that. Please build something for me. So if you do that, it will generate a given website. For example, let's take a look into this template that is there. And let's say that you like what you can see here. So you can open it on the side, take a preview of it, just navigate for a while, try to understand if it's the thing that you are looking for. If not, you can ask V0, please bring this page, change this thing. I don't want this position in this way. I want for example, a toggle to change from dark mode and light mode, all of those things. And I've done exactly that. So I basically built my website on V0, the all pages. So I knew that I want a blog. So I had a prompt to say, I need a blog. I want to list all the entries. I want the talks. So I want to please create a page where I will list my talks. And also in each talk, I want the title, I want the description, the abstract, and I want the places where it was presented before. On each place that it was presented before, please add a button in case I have a video that I can watch on YouTube related to that talk. So I've done that, and it came up with a brief structure using random data, and it was mostly of what I want. So just needed to change one or two things. Once I have that, I can use that as a reference to the thing that I want to implement. Since V0, if we go here and we say open in V0, you can see what I mean. It will use a project like this, okay, with TypeScript, and if you go to the package.json, it's using a ton of React dependencies, a lot of stuff, and I don't want all of that. I want to build it with the technology that I want. And I can come here and say, let's convert this thing into 11t. I've tried it. I download the project and I try to interact with the LLM saying, let's migrate this, let's convert this from this React project to 11t. It didn't work that well as well. So my approach was slightly different. What I decided to do was, now that I have a project created on GitHub, I have it with the latest versions of Tailwind and 11t. Let me start asking my IDE through the LLM exactly the same things that I asked V0. So exactly the same prompts. So what I've done is that I went to Cursor, that is my favorite IDE for this type of stuff, and I started prompting it, same things. I want to build a website for a developer that wants to list blog posts, blah, 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 blah. I want it in a style that is minimalistic. Keep in mind that this is using 11t and Tailwind. I want blog posts using Markdown. I had all of those steps. By the end, I had a site that was different from the one that was on V0. However, V0 had a better looking website, better aesthetics. So I had to move it from the thing that was built through here, because the LLM here was using Claude, to the thing that I want. How could I do that? So I started looking into V0 as my designer, let's say. Since the thing that it was produced there was the look and feel that I want, it was my UX designer. So I went to V0, rendered the web page, and grabbed a screenshot. By the way, if you don't know, you can go to the developer tools, click here, run a command, and say screenshot, and you can say, for example, capture a full-size screenshot. So basically, it will produce a screenshot of the whole page that you are seeing. Okay, you can use that, or you can simply decide, okay, I want a screenshot just from part of the website. So I would start with a full-size screenshot, pick that screenshot, go to Cursor, and on the chat, I will attach that screenshot, and I will prompt him saying, let's make this page look like this one. That was the first step. It will do a kind of like an okay job, but it wouldn't be perfect. Why? I would realize that, for example, when I have to switch between dark mode and light mode, things would be a bit off or the spacing would not be perfect. So the next step that I would take is that I would go section by section. For example, let's say for this header, this hero part, I would come here to the developer tools, find that section. I would copy this element with all the child elements. I went to cursor once again and said, hey, let's make it a bit better. Let's use this HTML as a reference to the thing that I want. I will even mention this is the HTML used by the thing that I took the print before. And this way it would perfect the output. Then I would need to go to the refinement step where I would need to adjust some colors, the spacings. Small things wouldn't be the way that I want, but 95% of the job was done. How is this different from what I used to do? In the past, if I wanted to do something like this, one of the first things that I would do was shopping around templates. I would look for a template, either in the best possible case, a template built already with 11t, because that would remove a ton of friction. Just need to fill in stuff, just colors, it's done. Or I would shop around for a template built for React or something like that, and then I would need to implement myself it to look like the thing that I want. What I've done here was to use two different tools that use AI in order to first sketch out the structure of my website, to come up with ideas on how things should look like. And once I was happy with that, I went to my IDE, I started prompting it to generate the same things. Since the style and the content was not as good as the first version, I used the print screens, the screen captures, and also the HTML that was produced by the thing that I was using before, V0. By the way, notice that I used the one from the rendered website. I didn't went to here looking for the components and trying to understand, because this thing is using React. I wanted to make the output look like the output that I wanted to build. Okay, that was the idea. So I used that as an input to tune the output of my LLM. So by the end, I just needed to adjust some details. Most of the job was done. The creative part, what I had to think about the website, what I wanted to make it look a bit more like this, a bit more like that. Okay, I can always ask V0, okay, make it look like this website, make it look like that one, add this section, remove this section, all of that stuff. And then I needed to bring it here. Things that were extremely painful. One thing that I've been thinking about in the past few months with using AI in my day-to-day is that, especially on things like front-end, if you don't use one of those frameworks or libraries that is extremely popular, it will be a bit painful. Why? Because the information available to the models is not the same. For example, not a lot of people use 11t, let's face it. So I would need to be extremely explicit, especially when I had a problem and I needed to fix it. I would often need to say to the LLM, okay, this is using 11t, the template is, for example, nanojunks. You can see, for example, here that I use both liquid and NGK. It's different styles of templates. And I will need to tell him, okay, this is this thing that I'm using and this particular thing is not working. For those cases, I would need to often go myself and fix it myself, look around myself. It was a bit painful. I believe that if this was a React website, it would be simpler than this approach. So, conclusion. If you ignore many of the implementation details and you start asking him, make it look like this, it's kind of like doing verification testing or snapshot testing. Okay, you have this thing, the output should be kind of like the same. If you do that, you will have better results. Important things, migration processes sometimes in cases like this might be a bit painful. So it's important to consider if we want to take one step forward and start again and then bring the old things in. The other important thing, using something a bit more obscure like 11t might be a bit painful, but I think 11t is a great tool, especially for these simple static sites that you want to generate. For something like a personal blog or a personal website where you don't want to change information a lot, you don't need complex stuff, you don't need a backend. Using things like, for example, Gatsby that I evaluated it a long time ago, I'm not even sure if it's still a thing, to be honest. Those tools bring a ton of complexity in. They need a lot of tooling in place. They expect some complexity in place. They are designed to complex websites, not for those ones. And the comfort of having just some templating language and just a small set of packages is something that I value. If you want to see how I have done it, you can go to my GitHub account, and my website is publicly available. The source code is there. If you go to the pull requests, you can even find the one of the remake of the website. There's a ton of stuff there. And the good news is that it didn't take that long to come from that old version to the new version. So I hope this was somehow helpful. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.